Y'all, welcome back to Kentucky Fried Wargaming, where two guys who are qualified to talk about anything decide to talk about a game with hard math and chance. I'm Joe.
And I'm John.
And we are coming back to you for the third recording bit in 2 days, as we really tried to stay hot and heavy to keep up to date with all the updates that Parabellum told us they were putting out. Last week, that they put out the, what did they call the stream, John? The...
Happy Hour.
Happy Hour, thank you. They put out the Happy Hour, where they showed off all the new rules that were coming and walked their way through their design philosophies, what they hoped to accomplish, what their intentions were. And after that, they then released for Nords and Wadroon the changes early. And to try to keep up so y'all can have those, we are making separate videos for each to walk you through the foundational rewrites that are happening in both of the factions, Nords and Wadroon.
Yeah, and so, like, if you look at this update, you have Nords, you have Wadroon, and then you have everyone else in core rules. And so that's how we're going to make these episodes. We're going to do Nords, we're going to do Wadroon, and then we're going to do everything else. Most of what exists in this update is for Nords and Wadroon. We will be seeing more after. So really, these two factions are getting the most, and it's quite good. It's very fun. We're loving it. We're basking in it. I play Wadroon. He plays Nords. We're going to fist fight each other about it for the next couple of weeks, and we're going to give you what we can prove is good and what's not after playing these. And we're going to take this first look at what we think and then test it and give you the results.
Yep, because our goal here really is to be very clear that these are purely first intuitions. What we, off the rip, without having the experience of the new stuff, think might be the case, our rough opinions on them, where they come from, and then walk you through the process of how we test those, how we come to new conclusions, maybe how we keep old ones but refine them a little, maybe some we turn out absolute garbage and we toss them in the trash. But we've noticed that there's an influx on the channel of people who are newer to war games or newer to this game, or maybe it's the first time they're trying to tune up to get deeper with a game, and haven't been through that process before, of what that's like. You see the sort of end product of hot takes on the internet who never check themselves, or content creators or tournament guys who are just I know the best thing, but you didn't see how they got there. So this is our way to kind of try to lay all that bare. And today we're going to do it with Wadroon, and if you want to hear about Nords, episodes up on the channel. But for the Wadroon, I think we have to start where Leandros insisted. I mean, we got to start at the chants, right? It's
Ooga shaka. Ooga, ooga, ooga shaka.
We gotta. I mean, they are the core of the army, literally. So you'll see here, War Chant.
Leandros says that the army is about dinosaurs and screaming. This is the screaming part.
Yep. And I actually like what they've done here. All right, John, there's a lot of words on the screen, but summarize, what have they changed?
So, I'm not going to tell you anything about how it used to work. I'm just going to start there.
There's a video on that on the channel if you want to go find it. It's all outdated now.
If you've been playing Wadroon for a while, you know how it works. If you're new to Wadroon, if I tell you how it used to work, it might just confuse you. Because the new version, I think, still captures what made the last one cool, but while being easier to read and functionally the same thing.
I think it has less pitfalls, but we'll get to that.
Yeah. So, to start off with, before you even talk about how you chant, you have to figure out what things are going to chant. To determine that, every time you pick a hero to lead a warband, you're going to choose between famine, death, or war. You can then, if it is your warlord, choose them to be Conquest instead. Every unit in that warband will chant that cult. Flat. So if you have a Mounted Predator with Raptor Riders, and an Apex Predator, and then another Apex Predator, they're all going to chant. Say you picked war. They're all going to chant war.
Yep. Easy peasy.
How do you chant? Well, when you draw a command card, you will then generate a marker for your cult in the sequence. What is a sequence? The sequence is a portion of the board, or out separate from the board. We're going to lay your cards, your markers, or whatever it is, to count to 3.
Yep.
So you will draw your command card, generate your token. You're going to put it in your token pool. Say I draw my Mounted Predator, and it's war. I will generate a war token. Say I have another warband that is, say, a Matriarch Queen that is on famine. I will then draw my Matriarch Queen, and it is famine. I will generate a famine token. I now have 2 tokens in the pool. And then say the third thing I draw is a Raptor Rider at war again. I will then draw the Raptor Rider and place a war token down.
Mm-hmm.
I now have 2 war and a famine token. And I am at 3. Now, I can, at 3, decide if I want to chant. And I can only chant a tier 1 war, because that is how many markers I have that can create a thing. And you determine that based off of the chart.
I've scrolled down to the chart. You can see it on the screen. So
Look at the chart.
observe. The chart, you will notice that there are different entries for famine, death, war, and conquest. You'll notice that the tier 1 of famine, death, and war are all the same bonus. The non-light regiment command stand counts as 1 additional stand for the purposes of seizing objective zones. That's nice and easy. If you have 2 markers of either famine, death, or war, you can burn them and get that same buff regardless of which cult you're chanting from. Nice and easy. However, if you want to get to the more bespoke abilities and more powerful abilities, arguably, you have to have 3 markers of the same type in the sequence off to the side.
Yes.
So, for example, if you have 3 famine tokens and you decide that you are going to pop it, that I want to give my unit a buff that I'm about to activate, you can burn your 3 markers for famine, and then you would get this tier 2 famine buff. Add 2 inches to that unit's charge range. And then all the markers empty out and are burned. You used them to get your ability. And now you're going to need to chant again to refill that sequence again, and then you can use it however you would like to get buffs off of here. Where this gets a little weird, though, is at Conquest.
It does get a little weird with Conquest, but we're going to give it a little bit of, before we get into Conquest, because it's sort of the advanced one, right? It is a little bit different. It interacts weird. The frequently asked questions are, what do I do if my character's drawing him? Because if you draw a character and he's at 3, you can't chant with a character because they don't get the buff. Like, characters don't charge, right? Regiments characters are in charge. You just put the token in there, you move on. But what happens if I already have 3 tokens in the sequence? Okay, well then you take one of the things in the sequence and you remove it, and then you place the new one in. You can choose to do that, or you can just take the token that you generated and throw it in the trash. It's whichever.
So, for example, in John's example, he had 2 war and 1 famine in the sequence off to the side of the board. Maybe his next activation gives him another war. So now he has 1 floating war, and he has the 3 in the sequence. Maybe John wants to get the big war buff, so he decides he's going to drop that 1 famine and pop the war in. So now he has 3 war. So that when he would like, later on in the turn, he could get this tier 2 war buff, which is quite good. One of the things I will say is all of these tier 2 buffs are quite desirable, depending on the board state. Plus 2 inches to charge for famine. Quite good, very flexible. There's no game in which that's not a great bonus. For death, the regiment gains untouchable. If you want to try to make sure that something stays alive, incredible buff to put on something. In there may or may not be a very particular unit that I think slaps with that buff, but we'll talk about it here in a little while. And then for war, the regiment gains cleave 1, special rule. Note, it's not cleave plus 1, it's cleave 1. But on a lot of units in here that have a lot of attacks, but no cleave, cleave 1 could be pivotal for you to push that damage through.
Another thing to know is that because you can choose to have them go off or not, you do not have to have, say, your famine buff go off on a famine character or famine unit. You can get to 3 famine and then use that on, say, a war unit that they do not have to match. That's very good. Now, we were going to talk about Conquest and why it's different, like why it's weird. Well, it's because tier 1 is automatically different, which is +2 to its March characteristics for the first March action only during its activation. That's really good. It's quite good, actually.
Extra mobility around the board, everyone loves that.
It is important to know it is not +2 to your march the entire time. So if you try to charge, it will not give you +2 to charge.
Or if you tried to march, it wouldn't give you +4 for your activation.
And then we are going to go to the tier 2 of it, which is +2 to your evasion characteristic, to a maximum of 2. What this means is that if you have something with evasion 0, it goes to evasion 2. If you have something with evasion 1, it goes to 2. If you have something with evasion 2, it gets nothing.
Yep.
Why that is different and why that is cool is because there's a lot of stuff in your army that would really benefit from having evasion 2. Things like your base troops, things like that. The reason why Conquest is weird is because it's harder to get those markers. You can either get them from Chosen of Conquest, a unit, a Scion of Conquest, or if your Warlord picks, to be from the Cult of Conquest. And that is really it.
Mm-hmm.
There might be a relic or two that'll let you get some, but that's the only way to get this.
So generally speaking, you're probably going to find most of your games, you're popping famine, deaths, and wars, until you get your Warlord and its regiment, and maybe some relics popping off to let you, a couple of times a game, get your Conquest going.
And if you're a newer player to Conquest, and honestly to even just Wudrun as a faction, you should probably pick one of these to focus your army on, and just focus on using that for a while. Before you try to start blending in different ones. Right? I know that the draw there of I'm going to have a war band for each, and they're all going to like chant perfectly. It's just not going to happen as much as you think it is, and it's going to be hard to manage. Try doing it with one, slowly work your way out with the rest.
Eventually, you will get to the point where you could sort of like juggle it, no problem. You could keep all 8 balls in the air like a Cardi. It's all going to work great, but you got to work your way there. But this is the core ability of your army. At Wudrun's base, this is it. You are going to be chanting and trying to chant for most of your game.
And if you're a returning Wudrun player, like this is a Wudrun, like if you're coming to Wudrun into the rework as a person who played Wudrun in the past, you're going to think that these are lower powered, that the chants got nerfed. And you are right. They did. They lost a lot of keywords. They lost a lot of stuff off of them. They lost a lot of potential. But that's because, and they have been very clear when talking about this from a design perspective, that power was instead going into the units themselves, the regiments themselves, and opened up design space for them to start adding in unique chants onto individual units or regiments. And so you might get a unique chant that only is used with certain regiments to do a unique effect because they have toned down the base chants. They want chants to be a more expansive mechanic overall and long term, instead of all front-loaded into the core rules. It's just a different design space, but it's the same mechanic. It's just going to be explored in different ways. I personally prefer this new way because I think it's much more interesting from a design space and has a lot more potential long term. But I'll let you figure that out yourself.
Yeah, for me, I think this is really helpful for new players because you don't have to memorize nearly as much with the way this works. With Famine, Death, and War, all of them share the same tier 1. So memorizing that one ability gets you a long way to memorizing your options, as opposed to the way it used to work, which was just a lot more referencing, a lot more of a learning curve. I think this gives you a little forgiveness. And also, in the old times, when your chants hit 3 in the sequence, but when you had 3 chants in the sequence, they would pop whether you wanted them to or not. That was really difficult for new players. Now, you choose. So that's where we were talking about earlier, how this is a little more forgiving. If you're learning, that is one of the reasons why I think that's the case. So hopefully this gives you a better on-ramp. But as you become experienced, I promise you, the ceiling here for skill expression is just colossally high.
Now, we're not done with core rules for Wudrun, though. There is one more.
Observe
that is
the cults.
The cults of Ukafazane. I don't know if that's right, but I'm going with it.
Say it with your chest. You went to Florida public schools, I mean.
Yeah. It's basically a cult. That's why, whatever. There's 4 rules listed here, but they all do the same thing, just for different cults. And what it all means, to summarize a lot of words, is whatever you pick to be your warlord, the cult they follow, you can then take two regiments of mainstay units for them in that. So if you take, for example, you want to take the Chosen of Death as mainstay in a, say, Queen warband, you would take the Cult of Death as the Queen's choice for cult, and then you would be able to bring 2 regiments of Chosen of Death as mainstay in her warband. You could not take 3, you could take 2.
So it gives you a little more flex to lean into a particular build direction that you want.
Mm-hmm. Currently, there's only 2 Chosen out. One of them's for pre-order, that is Chosen of Death. The other one is Chosen of Conquest. It looks like the next ones we'll be getting is Chosen of War, because they have points by accident in the PDF and not preview rules. But they both have gotten rules changes. They're just not currently have models, so you're not going to use them.
Mm-hmm. So this will pay off over time. You're just going to have to wait a minute. And that's okay. I'm okay with a little bit of future-proofing with the core rules. It allows for some expansion. Next. Many of the character options had their supremacies either changed or totally reworked. So I think it's worth going through them briefly, just so you get an understanding of what your options are. Because oftentimes, I feel like in Conquest, faction core rules are what really determine playstyle in a lot of ways, but the next most important factor to determining how your list plays is gonna be your supremacy abilities. Who you pick as your general, and what buff they give you, usually army-wide.
And this is even some ways that they seem to be pushing a sub-faction theme is with supremacies and abilities tied to the new keywords from supremacies or from characters.
Yeah, very cool. First,
all right,
Matriarch Queen. Matriarch Queen. Interesting. So this is broken up into 2 paragraphs. First and foremost, when a regiment chants the battle cry anywhere on the battlefield, meaning you decide to pop your chant on someone, it immediately loses broken status. So if you've taken enough damage that your unit breaks from morale, if it chants, immediately gone. And even if they're not around, this is active. Next, though, to add a little bit more spice to it, once per battle, if the Queen chooses to, all regiments on the battlefield have their command stand count as +2 stands for the purposes of seizing objective zones. This counts as for lights as well. Meaning,
yes,
if you have a tough time maybe getting your mediums on the board, which normally means you aren't going to be scoring points because you don't have mediums or heavies, you could pop this and have your light units that did make it on, for 1 turn, capture objectives. Which is so
it allows you to do like a turn 2 Raptor Riders take objectives thing, which is super fun. And a note with the first ability for the Queen is that it removes broken status. Some of you might be hearing that and go, well, that sucks. I'm just going to add a couple caveats. It does not say you take the rally action. It just says you become unbroken.
Mm-hmm.
You're no longer broken. So that circumvents the new no more than 3 actions rule. So you could start unbreak from the chant and then still do 2 actions. Or if you were a thing that has 3 actions, do 3 actions.
Because this is just popping, your unit doesn't have to do it. Seems minor, and it probably is, but when we see pitfalls, we just like to point them out so people understand some of the nuances when we can spot them.
Mm-hmm.
We don't always spot them, but we do our best.
I think that this one is very good if you are just trying to sort of have an all-comers sort of army at first, where you don't want to like get into any one specific playstyle too much. You just sort of want something that's kind of even all over the place. Matriarch Queen's great at that.
Mm-hmm.
And her warband's pretty good.
Which we'll get to in a moment.
Mm-hmm. Chieftain. Chieftain is all about foot infantry. He is about bringing tribes specifically, so not the chosen troops. He is all about, like, I want blooded, I want braves, I want hunters, I want slingers.
Mm-hmm.
I think hunters are tribes.
I think so too. We'll get there. We can double check
it. So what does he do? So he allows the range of his Crushing Force ability, which we will explain when we get to him, to be the entire battlefield. So he gives a buff to all infantry across the entire battlefield. I believe it's just +2 impacts. We'll get there. And then also, his Tempo ability, which gives everything that has the tribe's keyword, Vanguard, to the entire army. So if you bring an entire army of blooded and
Hunters,
braves,
slingers,
they all get Vanguard. And just to let you know, Warbred, though they are not infantry, they are the tribes, so they would get Vanguard because it specifically says all friendly infantry tribes regiments in this army would get Tempo. But wait, no. What's his sheet? What does his actual sheet say? Because I don't think his sheet says infantry.
Okay, here we go. Tribes Pride veteran regiments in this warband gain the Flurry special rule. Crushing Force. When a friendly Tribes regiment within 10 of this character stand chants Battle Cry, it gains Impact +2 special rule until the end of the round. Tempo. Friendly infantry regiments in this character warband gain the Vanguard special rule.
Never mind. I was wrong. Warbred don't get it.
Learning in practice. And we keep these in specifically so you don't feel bad if you misread something, because we do it all the time.
It's true. I was cooking up a spicy oops, like all Warbred list that just doesn't work now. How dare you do this to me, Parabellum? This is my Mountain Jotnar moment.
Read better. But I still think it's quite good because Vanguard, getting everything up the board really quickly, it's a lot of pressure. And if you have a lot of that infantry tribes on the board, you could get close to someone's face way earlier than they probably expect.
The only negative I have to say about this, though, is that not that it's bad, it's that there's so much other things the army does outside of tribes that pigeonholing yourself to just taking tribes will not be great. I think that there's a lot more other options that you're not going to lead in this. But if that is what you want to do, I'm glad that it's there. I just don't think it's going to be the way that people want to play. Which is probably fine, because you don't want people spamming like 4 units.
Good lord, no. Next we have the Thunder Chieftain. Thunder Chieftain, very simple. Way less rules here than some of the other options. But Thunder Chieftain has Thunderous Assault. While this character stand is on the battlefield, all friendly Speakers regiments gain the Shock special rule. This Supremacy ability is always considered to be active. Shock, meaning on the charge you get +1 clash. And that does affect your impacts. As you can imagine, given that he's a Thunder Chieftain, meaning he's a chieftain on top of a Triceratops, it's going to make the other Triceratops units very good. And you'd be correct. We will make a note about them. There has been, from the time this was released to now, a hotfix around that unit. We will talk about them when we get there, but Thunder Riders have changed slightly. They are slightly tuned down, so don't worry if that is your initial thought off the rip. However, even with that, I still think the Thunder Chieftain is going to be pretty compelling, and some people are going to take him and do quite well with him, despite the change.
Yeah, I do think that unlike tribes, there's a way more Speakers units. And so having something that targets Speakers is just more beneficial here. Speakers is essentially everything that's a dinosaur. Or dinosaur adjacent.
Things that ride dinos, yeah.
So Hunting Pack, Raptor Riders, Apex Predator, Tauntaur,
Thunder Riders.
Caudal, Thunder Riders. Like a lot of really good units are all around Speakers. And if you're a person who just really wants dinosaurs, this is what you're going to take.
And who could blame you? Truly.
I don't have a Thunder Chieftain. I might be ordering one on Wednesday.
Because it's pretty cool. Very cool. And I think it might also be one of the stronger ones, but we'll see how that pans out in a little bit of time. But for me, my pick here for the coolest, and I do mean coolest, I don't mean best, I mean coolest, just the one I think is the most sick, is the Predator or Mounted Predator. Although I think the Mounted Predator version is cooler. We'll talk about it when we get to the War Scroll. But they both share the same Supremacy ability. And that is, when an enemy regiment is destroyed, immediately add a chant marker of any cult in your sequence. Should the destroyed enemy regiment be in range of an objective zone, add 2 chant markers of any cult instead. This supremacy ability is always considered to be active. Meaning, you are going to literally farm chant tokens off of the enemy. And if they're on objectives, you're going to farm a lot of chants very quickly, letting you pop chants very quickly.
And a small note here is if this appeals to you, because that sounds like a very aggressive playstyle, and I think there's gas in that tank. Look at the relics, because there's a relic that allows you to have any like any tokens that fall off or unsun tokens become famine tokens, and I think there's gas somewhere in there. Like the pieces are starting to get there for that. That is just sort of like a steamrolling list that sort of picks up a little bit of momentum and then just continues momentuming. I think it's there. We're almost there. It's just right now everyone's looking at Thunder Chieftain and going, ooh.
It is the first pick. But I think someone could come out the woodwork with Mounted Predator and clean some people's clocks with clever play. I will admit it will be harder to pilot than the Thunder Chieftain strat, but I think there will be people who pull that
off. Now, for the last supremacy ability, Scion of Conquest. Okay, so this ability is very good if you're a new player, and I think this ability is just very good in general. It does give you a lot of control, but I think some of it got a little weird. It got a little weird in the rework. So, his ability is you have this go off once per game until the end of the round. Instead of drawing a command card from your command stack, you instead search your command card for a command card of your choice. In addition, until the end of the round, all regiments that would add a chant marker to the chant sequence add a Conquest chant marker instead. And so, here's why it's weird. Being able to turn your deck into a hand is awesome. Like that's a great
it's so
effect.
Powerful.
It's very good.
You get perfect activation for one turn. That's so good.
But here's where it's odd to me, right? Because previously it used to be that Conquest chants markers could be used as any other token. I do not believe that I read anywhere in this that is still the case. And so what this means is your entire army for that turn will be chanting Conquest, and unless you're built to take advantage of being able to chant Conquest for an entire turn, I don't know if that's a thing that you really want to do.
Mm-hmm. I could see that maybe being a thing where you're just drowning in that buff.
Oh no, I was wrong. They kept it in. You may exchange any number of Conquest markers for an equal number of Famine, Death, or War markers.
Oh, never mind.
This is still great. No notes.
Slam dunk.
I was wrong.
Learning in progress. You don't know, we spent so long reading this and taking notes. Multiple times. Many hours. Still messed it up. I went to Kentucky public school. That's why.
My only excuse is that while reading this, I just kept going, wow, I really like dinosaurs.
Jurassic Park song playing in your head.
And I would have picked it up if we were playing games with it, but we haven't played games yet. It's been like 2 days.
Sure. But I do think there's gas in most of these supremacy abilities. I do. Some of them are going to be harder to pilot than others. I grant that. I think that's going to just be true. But I don't look at any of these and go, man, Hero X just kind of doesn't work at all. I do think there is play and builds around all of these, and it really just comes down to how good you are at piloting and how hard are you willing to work to extract some of these crazier combos that are maybe a bit more difficult.
Yeah, and I think that what these supremacies really say is a sense of longevity with the faction. No matter what changes come for the next year, they could just not touch these supremacies for a year, and a lot of them are still going to see play in some way, right? Even if they manipulate all the other pieces of Wladrune, these things will still have use and will see use somehow. And I think that that's great design. Like I really like it.
Mm-hmm. Next, we get into the actual rules themselves for the heroes. We won't do this for all of the base units. There's way too many. But we can at least run through some of the heroes that I think changed more.
Yeah. What's weird compared to Nords is a lot of these either changed a ton or like not at all.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of like slight changes.
Really for the Queen, the big one is that no more Fanatic, just like baseline. Not a
But that's because Fanatic's gone. Like, Fanatic's just gone.
So that got taken because it got taken from everybody. Otherwise, she still heals. She still gets the cool Supremacy ability that lets you try to fight for objectives. Like, she now has her cool Supremacy ability that lets you fight for objectives. But she still herself on the field does the same thing you would expect.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I think she's pretty good at it.
Chieftain, right? So Chieftain kept some stuff, but a lot of stuff changed. So the big thing is he's still a beat stick in combat. He is Cleave 2, Flurry, Clash 3, 6 attacks. Just like Blender. Just like, great. I've had a Chieftain, like, kill a unit of Men-at-Arms because he spiked really good. It's wild, right? But now he also provides the buff to tribes units, including his regiment within 10 inches, and the tempo rule, which gives him Vanguard. So here's what I think Chieftain's really going to be useful for in lists, is a individual warband of like a core of infantry, where you want to have like maybe him and a brick of veterans, and then have like maybe a unit of slingers and a unit of blooded.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or really, 2 units of veterans, 2 units of slingers, and you have the slingers a Vanguard up turn 1/2 depending on when they come in, up and then up again just into their like range to shoot. And with their new ability, they can chant and then be able to do their 18-inch effective range, which is really good. So I think that he has a lot of play in that instance, and he does make veterans really good. Veterans got a little bit weaker, but I think they're still really good, especially when you give them Flurry.
I mean, reroll all failed hits is just, no matter the game system, always strong. It's just is.
And so really, if you're looking at bringing infantry in sort of any regard outside of like units of Chosen, you should look at bringing the Chieftain and bringing them in the Chieftain's Warband. If you're not looking at bringing infantry, you probably don't want to bring him.
Yep. He's a really cool piece, but he synergizes with a very particular slice of the army.
Yep.
Next, Thunder Chieftain. Speaking of things that synergize with very particular parts of the army, usually, you could read his his profile. He wrecks face in melee. Let's not mince words. He charges stuff, he crushes them, he stomps them into the dirt, and then keeps on running over top of them to stomp something else.
I'm going to be honest, he doesn't even need to clash. If he's in a unit of Thunder Riders, they don't need to clash. They can just get move, charge, impacts, trample.
Yep.
And they'll do a well of work. But I think what
here's the key. Ride the lightning.
Yep. He gives the 2 units, the maximum units of Thunder Riders you're going to put in his warband if you're bringing him, flank.
So you don't have
it's like the only flank in the army.
So you don't have to compete to try to get these medium Thunder Riders to come on the board, which could be a little dicey depending on how you roll.
They're heavies.
Oh, they're heavies? I thought they were mediums. Yeah. Huh. I was always just
they're
wrong.
heavies.
But even better, I mean, now you don't have to chance heavies coming on early, because if you miss a heavy drop, and you often will, it can put you behind on tempo. Being able to just guarantee that's not a problem, especially when you're competing with something like a Tantor that's also heavy that you might want to spend your auto come in your lists, even better. So truly, don't get me wrong, he takes a lot of names and kicks a lot of butt, but the thing I think that makes him truly stand out for me is Ride the Lightning.
And I'm going to add 2 more things to him. He should just cost 170 points, because you're always going to take the 20-point upgrade that allows you to give Hardened 1 to those Thunder Riders you just took.
Yeah.
Unless you just really can't afford it for a good reason, you're going to want to give Hardened 1 to your Thunder Riders. They're 220 points apiece now, and so that's 440 points of your army. Giving that much Hardened 1 for 20 points is really good, especially because they just got a slight nerf that we'll talk about. Now, on top of that, you can take this unit and this character, and you can put it inside of Raptor Riders. Why would you want to put that unit inside of Raptor Riders? Well, because shock. The shock supremacy is specifically while he's on the battlefield. So, if you build the list around having a bunch of speakers units, Raptor Riders, Hunting Pack, Caudals because they're mediums, right? All sorts of speakers units. You're going to want shock as early as possible. So if you put him inside of Raptor Riders, that fixes that problem.
Yep.
On top of that, Raptor Riders are fast. And his movement doesn't matter anymore. So now, this profile, the Brutal Impact 2, the Cleave 2, the Impact 4, the Line Breaker, the Trample 2, can all come at a blistering 8 inches, which is quite good on turn 1, if you want.
Maybe faster with chance. Maybe faster. So, yeah, I do think there's going to be quite a few times where people are going to put Thunder Chieftain with Raptors. It's just to auto them in on turn 1, get your buff going, get everything rolling when turn 2 rolls around.
I do think it'll be a pretty common warband to see 2 units of Thunder Riders with Raptor Riders, and then sometimes a Caudal. And the Thunder Chieftain will go inside the Raptor Riders.
Yeah, I think that'll be fairly common. Next. Predator. Both on foot and mounted, but they are slightly different.
Yeah, so I'll talk about the Foot Predator. I'll let Joe talk about the Mounted Predator, because I'm going to get to play with the model, so I already get to have some fun with it.
It's fair.
The Foot Predator I have used in almost every single list for Wizard since I've played, and I do not think I will be bringing him now. Let me explain why.
Womp.
He is not bad. He has Barrage 4, which is better than he had before. He has Armor Piercing 1 and Deadly Shot on that. It's okay. He's got Fiend Hunter, which is also okay. He's got Forward Force, the only thing in the army that has that, and giving a unit flank is very good. And he's got a pretty good warband. He can pick a lot of options, a lot of things. And he gives a unit that he's attached to fire in advance. That's really good. You're going to put him in slingers or hunters or something that's going to be very beneficial. Here's why I don't think he's that great. You are going to be taking other warbands. You will not have the space to bring a character that isn't doing what you want it to do. I think he will see play in tribes lists if you're going to want to bring a bunch of Braves, want to bring a bunch of Blooded, want to bring a bunch of Slingers. You will see him used there, but that's it. And it doesn't help that the Mounted Predator exists and is really good.
Yep. Speaking of which, let's just talk about Mounted Predator, because I think they're incredible. I mean, we already talked about...
I got one on order.
I don't blame you. I mean, we already talked about how I think the Supremacy Ability is really cool and that you can farm up chance, right? Mounted Predator, though. One, they still get Barrage. Barrage 3, not bad. You lose it a little bit for being on a monster, but worth it. 18 inches, Armor Piercing 1, Deadly Shot, Fiend Hunter, that still hangs over. However, you get Expert Hunters, where friendly Speaker's regiments in this warband ignore the effects of hindering, dangerous, broken, and perilous terrain. Which is so incredibly important if you want to keep things like Inspire or Impacts. Those things normally would go away if you have to run across, say, a forest terrain. Not with the Mounted Predator around, though. And that's for the regiment. And they don't even have to be the Warlord for that Expert Hunter's ability to go off. They just have to be there.
And I'm going to take this moment to talk about a thing we talked about in the Nords episode, which is that Parabellum said in the bottom of the Nords PDF that you should have 4 forests on your table, preferably. 2 of them in the center of the board. Or
Central.
near the center. Central in the board.
Wherever most of the fighting's going to take place, put 2 of them somewhere near there.
And so what that means is you're always going to be interacting with hindering terrain at some point in a game. You just will.
You should be, at least.
And they want you to do that. And they're probably going to be releasing, in the future, terrain maps or something along those lines that will help build terrain for competitive play. And if you play competitively or you need a direction of how to build tables and you build tables for your local group, you're probably going to be looking towards those. And as people start using more and more terrain, the terrain rules that exist that allow you to ignore those are going to just be better. And for the Mounted Predator, this is exceptionally good. It's the Nord's ability, but better.
On a dinosaur.
On dinosaurs. Because let's look at their warband for just a second. They can take Hunting Pack and Raptor Riders as mainstay.
Beautiful.
That's great. Love dinosaurs. They can also take an Apex Predator, a Caudal, or a Tauntaur. You're probably going to take, because I've built 6 lists that use this core, this little shell, of Mounted Predator, 2 units Raptor Riders, a Tauntaur, and a Caudal.
Sounds reasonable. Or maybe, you don't have the Caudal, but you have an Apex Predator. Cool, drop the Caudal, bring an Apex. Great.
Yep.
You still got your cool dino, you get your great buff, you're still going to get all of your impacts, you're still going to get your inspired for clashing. That's a great warband. And again, doesn't have to be the warlord.
Yeah, and like if you maybe don't like Raptor Riders, or you want to pay as little as possible for like lights, Hunting Pack are still good. You can bring 2 Hunting Pack and then 2 Apex Predators if you wanted. Like you just bring 2 T-Rexes and a bunch of compies with a Mounted Predator, and you're great. You're set.
Yeah, I think the Mounted Predator is awesome. And I think you're going to see him a lot. And don't get me wrong, I think a lot of people are going to get really fixated on Thunder Chieftain. Keep your eye out, mark my words. I think Mounted Predator, even after Thunder Chieftain sort of like has their day in the sun, is still going to be here putting in the work as like an MVP. And well, I won't say every list, but in a lot of lists.
And also, I think the Mounted Predator is a sick model and is wonderful.
Oh, easy. One of the best models that's coming out this winter. Wing Lord
All
Predator. Right. Okay, this is a new one. There's a lot of words. John, I need you to make it shorter. Too many words makes me angry.
Okay, I'm not. I'm going to just start going through it because there's a lot.
Why do you hate me?
Movement 9, good. Move number high, that's great.
Big number.
Why is that great? Because it has fluid formation and fly, so it gets to do all sorts of fun stuff. But here's where it gets a little weird. Okay, because we're going to start by talking about a small problem with this maneuverability. Fluid formation is an action still. It is not an out-of-sequence action currently. It's a free action, but it's still an action. And so you cap at 3 actions. So when you go to do a free reform with a fluid reformation at the beginning of your turn before you move, you then move and do your second action. You no longer can get your free volley action. So the first ability, Mounted Hunters, this regiment may perform a free volley action during its activation. You're choosing to either do that or your fluid formation. I don't know if that's intentional. That's how it currently reads, though. So play with it like that until we find out if fluid formation is an out-of-sequence action or not. That's how it's going to work.
And they've already done a hotfix, which is why we had to re-record a little insert for the Nords episode. So we know they've already changed some units that came out in ways they didn't intend, and this wasn't touched. So it might be intended.
And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they kept it as this work, how this works, because fluid formation is a very strong ability. And if you made fluid formation an out-of-sequence action, though it might help this individual regiment, I think it would do a lot to mess up other regiments that could get fluid formation or might have fluid formation and then would get to have more activations than they probably should. Jury's out, don't know yet. It does put a small hamper on this specific unit for now.
Mm-hmm.
But it still is Volley 3. It still is Clash 3. Those are both pretty good. It's better than 2. 1 less than Ashen Dawn. 11 attacks, which is nothing to, like,
sneeze at?
Scoff at.
Especially for a ranged unit, which normally don't have much anything to do in melee.
I would call this a hybrid unit, but we'll get there. 16 wounds. Pretty good. Resolve 3. That's standard for Wadrun. Defense 3, that's standard for Wadrun. Evasion 2, that's really good. Evasion 2 is great. It's a giant flying bird, that makes sense. So, now, what special rules does it have? Irregular, it cannot contribute to reinforcement line. You're Wadrun, you don't really care about that. Barrage 6. Okay, that's little plink shots, that's useful. Armor piercing 1, so it's essentially cleave 1. Fly. Fly is a very rare but very good keyword. It allows you to fly over regiments, allows you to do whatever, but a note with fly. Fly does not allow you to ignore terrain. It allows you to fly over terrain, but does not allow you to ignore effects such as hindering or anything like that over terrain, currently. If I'm wrong, someone tell me. He also has Cleave 1 and Impact 6. All pretty okay. Birds of Prey. Once per round, when it marches over an enemy regiment, it can inflict 5 hits that count as originating from the flank and do not trigger morale tests. This is great harassment.
The key is that it's size 1 only, but there's a lot of size 1 models in the game.
Yeah, infantry, essentially. Death from above. This regiment gains a brutal 2 impact if it's from the side or rear. That's great. That's really good. Because you could move over a regiment of infantry and then charge something that wasn't expecting you in the side, and then just do something. Like, they'll just be very mad. They'll be very unhappy at you. Also, all friendly speakers monster regiments in the army gain access to the following chant. Remember at the beginning of the episode when we were talking about how they were adding individual chants to units? This is one of them. It's very, very good. Predatory Shriek. You may chant this battle cry by discarding 3 chant markers of any cult in any combination from the sequence. So you could have one of each and throw them all to this.
Great way to burn them.
Great. This regiment, so the monster using this, will get +1 terrifying until the end of the round. And you might ask yourself, wow, you guys have said that terrifying wasn't good before. Terrifying is great when it isn't a supremacy ability.
It's great to have an addition, not to be forced to build your whole army around.
Yes, this becomes an option. So where this is a tech piece that you can get, where you can then do something like, I don't know, take an Apex Predator that you put in a Mounted Predator list that has like a famine buff, and it then decides it's going to just charge something with Terrifying 3 now, and it can just slam into something, and for like an 8-inch plus D6 charge, get into something's flank, and do its impact. I think it's like impact 6. You can do 6 impacts.
This chant has to affect this regiment, I think. Maybe? You may chant this.
Yeah, so you wouldn't be able to get the famine buff, but you could chant this as the Apex Predator.
Could you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you could.
Yep.
The chance on things, when I read it, the tense makes me think, oh, the Wing Lord has to do it. But no, you don't. Wording is tricky there.
He can let an Apex Predator do it, and then the Apex Predator can become Terrifying 3. And for a lot of things in the game, that just means you don't get morale.
Which is now quite good. And again, if you are facing someone like Old Dominion, and you know it won't give you anything, great. You're going to use your tokens elsewhere. Solves the problem.
Now, he can't be a warlord. That's fine. He doesn't have a supremacy, so don't care. And he has to bring at least 1 regiment in his warband.
Fair enough.
Okay. This is neat, but I think it suffers from the same problem that the other Predator does, in that the Foot Predator does. In that, like, though this is very cool, and it does a very unique thing in the army, currently, I don't know if you're going to take it because you're spending your points and your warbands in other places. This might change in the future, but currently, kind of tough to take. But I do want to see somebody bring this and like 2 units of Raptor Riders and then 2 Coddles and have like an Air Force situation.
God, that'd be cool.
That'd be hilarious. Also, that board would be crazy because the wingspan on this model is massive.
God, that's amazing. Next up, Scion of Conquest. This one, pretty straightforward, but I think is very cool, and I think is going to be pretty common. First off, because it's Priest, and it's your only caster in the Force as of now. So I think if you were ever going to want to take someone to cast spells, it's got to be this guy. And I do think you're going to want to do that, because as we're going to cover here in a minute, the spells got some cool options. But also, he's no slouch in combat. For Scion of Conquest, Cleave 2, you know, he's not like a little weedy, terrible fighter wizard. He is going to kick some butt, even in melee. Very cool. Cult of Conquest. This character stand counts as having chosen to follow Cult of Conquest, even if it is not the army's warlord. So this is a tech piece way for you to get Conquest tokens, even without this guy being your warlord. Which means you could potentially double up on chanting Conquest tokens. 1 from your Warlord's Warband, 1 from your Scion's Warband, if you really wanted to lean into a Cult of Conquest style build, right?
Yeah. And also, like, just as a note, because I've played with this model quite a bit, and Cleave 2, 5 attacks, 5 wounds is great, because every once in a while, like, they'll see what you can do with your wizard, and they're going to be like, I'm going to duel your wizard, and you're going to be like, that's fine. Cool. Cleave 2. Like, I'll tell people these profile, and they'll go, never mind, I don't want to duel you. I was like, that's right, that's what I thought. Anyways, I triple activate my Chosen of Conquest, I kill your unit.
My wizard's yoked!
It is just yoked wizard. Like, it's quite good.
Muscles and magic right here happening on the screen. And I love that. Because his spells are then cool. In addition to this really great buff, again, if you want to build around Conquest buff. It's a list choice sort of deal. Then he has a choice of 5 spells, 2 of which I think are really good. We'll get there. And warband-wise, it's pretty good. You got Blooded and Braves, which are pretty standard, but also Chosen of Conquest, which we'll touch on here in a little bit. Quite appealing in a lot of ways. They take a lot of buffs very well. And restricted, you could take Chosen of pretty much anything, and then Drum Beast.
And he can also ride the Drum Beast.
Yep. It's an option. So Scion of Conquest. I don't know if it's going to be like go to Warlord pick, but I think it will give you one turn that's super powerful, but I do think you're going to see a whole lot of warbands of Scion of Conquest being able to cast spells. And I think to take some elites.
I think it's pretty common. You're going to see Scion of Conquest with Chosen of Conquest, and he's in the Chosen of Conquest. A little combo you can do is you can still do a triple active. The only way you can do triple activation in the army is with Chosen of Conquest still.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can have him draw, generate a conquest marker, cast a spell that generates another conquest marker, and then immediately follow into his entourage unit and have another conquest marker and then triple activate. You can still do that without having to do much stuff. You just have to cast a spell now. But it's still quite good.
It's a hell of a combo, but you can't triple activate anything. So it's also really constrained, which I think is very nice. Popping down, now we get to, well, first I'm going to jump to spells really quick while we're talking about them. Spells. You got 5 here. For me, I think Crescendo is going to be an obvious go-to in a lot of ways. Add a conquest marker, as John was just saying. You secretly look at the top 3 command cards of your command stack and put them back in any order. I mean, one, getting conquest chant marker anytime added into the mag is very, very good. But in addition, if you realize your opponent is starting to activate their deck in a way that you did not account for, and maybe you realize that you made a mistake and you want to try to rectify that really early to avoid a big boo-boo, boom, Crescendo gives you a way to kind of make your deck a little more safe. Always great. And then Discordance. This effect pops up in a couple of other armies. I use it in Dwegum for the Ardent Karawa. I can tell you, it's very appealing. It has helped me stay in a game, even when I should have lost multiple times. And simply put, target enemy regiment cannot seize objective zones until the end of the round. Very simple. I promise you, though, quite good.
Yes. And just another note on Crescendo, because I want to give an example for why this is useful, if you're a person who might not understand. Say you build your command stack, and you build with a Scion of Conquest first, with Chosen of Conquest afterwards, and then any 2 regiments after. And you know, and your opponent knows, you both know that the first thing you're going to try to do is triple activate your Chosen of Conquest. That's just not going to change in your game plan. But because you've set up the beginning of the turn that way, and your opponent then draw, like say they win the Supremacy, and they draw, and they do a thing that you didn't expect. You can then just go, okay, I'm going to do the triple activation that you 100% knew was going to happen. You probably have a plan for and you're dealing with. But because you cast this spell that lets you look at the top 3, you can then change the game plan that you're going to do behind that. So you still get to do your triple activation early, and you still get to change your game plan. I've used that to win games multiple times. It's really good. It takes a while to get used to, but it is really good. And you should definitely think about using that.
Yep. And, like, let's say they won the Supremacy, same thing, it pops up, they draw their first card, and they do exactly what you expected. And you built your deck, you had your best guess for what they were going to do, you countered what your best guess was that they were going to activate, and you were right. Great. That's awesome. If you don't need the Conquest to activate, just cast a different spell. Because you don't have to buy spells individually, you get all of them. So out of the roster, you have options.
And a note with this spell list, because one of the things I noticed with Scion previously was that oftentimes, though, like even though a lot of these spells are very good utility and they do lots of cool stuff, there are times in which you're like, I want to cast a spell, but I have no reason to cast a spell. And so Cacophony is now a new spell that allows you to just pick a unit within 12 inches and just go, you're going to suffer a hit per success. I believe he's pre-6, so he just rolls 6 dice and just sees how many successes he gets and just causes that many hits. He blows their eardrums out. It's great.
Because why not? I mean, if you truly have nothing else you think is worth doing, throw some damage. Beautiful. Now, you got to scroll back up to the part that is the hardest to talk about. And that is character upgrades and artifacts. Oh,
Yeah.
buddy. This is touchy.
So I think in Madrid it's a little bit better than other places, just because there's some artifacts that are auto includes, which like good and bad there. Like we talked about earlier with the Thunder Riders and the like Hardened One relic, like that's really cool. That's really good. Also, Beads of Death is another one that's going to be pretty auto include in a lot of lists. It's 25 points. It allows the character stand to give his regiment Tenacious 1. That's really good. Almost every army that can give a unit Tenacious wants to give a unit Tenacious. And at 25 points, that's well worth its money. The problem with a lot of the other ones, though, is that you're not going to have the points to spend there necessarily. Really, what these are going to exist for is to spend points when you only have like 30, 40 points left. When you have less than a unit's worth of points to spend, and you need to fill out what characters can do. And that you're going to take that and you're going to lean into some directions. So, some of them are really good, like being able to give character stands in this army like forward force, right? For 30 points, a Cult of Conquest Warlord can just go, all of my characters get forward force. The Foot Predator has no purpose. He has now just trained everyone in my army, and he's in retirement. Or something like Cure, giving a character stand and his regiment Deadly Blades. That's pretty good. Especially in Chosen to Death. That's pretty good. But, like, what makes it really good is that it's 15 points. Like, that's easy to squeeze anywhere. But, like, the 40-point ability authority is going to be hard, despite the fact that it's really cool, to fit into a list. Because it's 40 points, right? And that is, blooded braves and veteran regiments in this army cannot become broken, even when a rule would force them to be so. Like, that's good. That's great, don't get me wrong, but are you going to spend the 40 points for that? Is that going to make a weird breakpoint where you can't take a unit now?
I think it depends on your force. And I think that's where they're trying to go with these upgrades. Because historically, I mean, from the entire time I've played Conquest, and even talking to people who've been playing a long time, the community sentiment has been, why spend points on upgrades? Just buy more bodies. Bodies are better than the upgrades anyway. And having looked at some of the old upgrades, I get that. I mean, they were an overwhelming majority of my Nords upgrades I never took. I wasn't even tempted to take. And that was a problem. However, it seems like here they are changing how they are looking at these upgrades. And instead of just being kind of piddly, middle-of-the-road upgrades, they are trying to make these either smaller point cost upgrades that give you lesser benefits that are good to have. Those are things, like John said, that are really good for filling in those last, 20 points of your list that oftentimes you end up with. And then others that are very expensive, but are kind of list-defining.
Mm-hmm.
For example, authority. Would you just willy-nilly pop authority into a list? No, absolutely not. However, if you were running that chieftain build on foot that we were talking about before, where your strategy was to push the board hard with a ton of infantry, in that case, 40 points to make sure that none of those things that you know you're taking a lot of can break, may be worth it. Because it makes that particular strategy work better.
And I also think masteries and artifacts and as a whole will become more and more important as the game sort of shifts away from rocket tags. Because part of the problem with artifacts and masteries, in my opinion, is that you're putting them on units, on heroes, and those heroes are going inside regiments that are probably going to die pretty quickly. But with a lot of these changes, we've seen a lessening of the sort of trading and a little bit more grinding, where how much you stick around is probably going to be a little bit more. And that improves the value that you're going to get from that. And I think they're getting closer to making all of that matter more and feel more to engage with. Much like a lot of the rules in the game, they're just sort of refining it pass after pass after pass incrementally, and it's just improving. So we'll probably have more thoughts for this as things come out. And if I'm going to be honest, they're probably going to learn from this, and the 100 Kingdoms one for their rework is probably going to end up looking better. And that'll be sick, because I think humans deserve cool relics.
I do too. Yeah, this one for me, like they've changed their core design philosophy so much that truly I've got to play them to see if I'm right. It's so different.
Yep.
I really want the pre-existing community sentiment to just be wrong. I would love for upgrades and like artifacts and masteries to be genuinely compelling and really play a fun list building factor both before the game and during the game. I want that to be true very badly. And I think they are closer. I will easily say they are closer now than they were before. That I don't need to test. I could just read it and tell. But to see where rubber meets road, just gotta wait. But we will circle back here in a couple of months after we've played a lot of these and a lot of list types and talk about it then.
But now we're going to come to the final segment of this here rework show. And that is, we're going to call out some units.
Because some of these are really cool. And John and I both individually looked at one particular unit and immediately honed in on it as being incredibly cool. And that is Big Boys Warbred.
Oh, Warbred? Warbred?
Warbred.
Okay, we're starting with because like you were talking, and I was like, "There's like 4 units you're talking about right now."
No, there's one that we both looked at and went, man, those are cool. Both in terms of like design and what I suspect will be balanced. Just, and we got to talk about them. The big, sad, tragic lads.
Yeah. So Warbred, their backstory, great, full of that pathos, but they have 6. They have movement 6, which is great. They're mediums, great. Brutes, great. Clash 3, they don't care about their volley. They don't throw rocks. 5 attacks, 6 wounds, resolve 3, defense 3, 0 evasion. All of that's great, except for the 0 evasion, but they can get evasion in plenty of ways in this army. And fun fact, this unit's going to go all over the place because they are a really good cookie cutter unit to go into anything.
Mm-hmm.
What special rules they got? Well, it's really simple. They get impact 2, they get cleave 2. They punch really good, and they hurt people when they charge them.
Makes sense. Love it.
Simple.
Sounds great so far.
And what's their special rule? Well, their charge distance is always their march value plus 5, and that cannot be changed. It cannot be added or reduced. And so, they always charge 11 inches.
No need to roll. And that isn't just putting you on like the halfway point. Where like, oh, you always roll a 4. It lets you always assume you roll a 5.
Yep, they can move charge 17 inches. That's fine. That's cool. Or you can just be like, you look at your opponent and say, if you do not stay 11 inches away from me, I will charge clash you. And it will hurt because I am Warbred and I hurt.
So much.
I don't need to have the Cleave 1 chant. I don't need the Famine chant. I don't need Untouchable from Death. I don't need the Conquest buff. I don't need to chant. I can simply make a marker and charge something. Or make a marker and move charge something. Like, they don't need any of the chants. They just solo operate themselves into something. And at 180 points, they are priced to move. They are great. They are useful. They are currently getting overshadowed by their bigger brothers. But they are pretty good. And I have a feeling we'll see play in lists somehow, some way, in multiple instances.
I entirely agree. I loved them before. I love them more now. They're great. They're for you. I feel like they are your Uger. Like they are your little workhorses who never let you down.
Yeah,
and I love that for you.
Mm-hmm.
Next, I mean, everyone and their brother has talked about it, so let's just jump into it. Thunder Riders, because wowie zowie, they're quite good. You're going to notice here that on this PDF, the stats seem very, very good. That they're heavies. John told me that one, I missed it. Move 6, pretty good for a heavy. Clash 3 natively, pretty great for a charging unit. 5 attacks apiece, also good. 6 wounds apiece, very compelling. Resolve 3, defense 4, evasion 0.
But now they've changed. They are defense 3. That is a change.
They were D4. A lot of people looked at that and went, wow, that's awfully good. And they were right, and Parabellum agrees. So they have knocked that down by 1. The PDF's not updated yet at the time of recording, but they are Resolve 3, Defense 3.
And they will be at 220 points instead of 230 points.
This one already says 220.
PDF I have says 230.
Weird.
I have the old PDF, I guess.
Why
anyways,
did they change the defense for? I don't know. But we know what their intent is very clear. They've posted.
I actually don't think that change is enough, and we'll get into that. But in Parabellum fashion, are probably doing an incremental change. Their exact words were, "We do not want to have another Ashen Dawn situation." They're aware of it, and they are probably going to have a better solution than I can come up with. But we're going to get into the rest of the thing this unit does, because if you play against Wadroon, you're going to need to know what this does. And if you do play Wadroon, you're going to want to know what this does.
So you have 3 of these in a unit. They're going to get Impact 4 apiece. They're going to get Brutal Impact 2. Just AP2 even on their impacts, which is very good. They're going to have Line Breaker. So if the enemy has shields, if they have Bastion, no they don't. And then Trample 2 at the end of it, so that after their activations are done, if they're in combat with someone, they're then going to do 2 extra attacks per stand that's alive into that unit, which gives you a little extra bit of damage if you do have to move charge something. You'll miss out on your clash and all those attacks, but at least you're going to get some tramples on the back end.
Yeah,
very good.
Note here, a couple things to note here. They have 0 cleave on their clash, and they only have 5 attacks. So they don't have a ton of attacks, they don't have a ton of cleave, but their move charge is strong. And what makes it so strong, you say? Well, it's because they get the same thing we just talked about on Warbread, but on a profile that will want to move charge constantly.
Oh yeah.
And that is, they get to always add plus 5 inches to their charge characteristic. Which means they always charge 11 inches. It's very good. It's very reliable. Arguably too reliable. For this specific unit, it's a great ability. I just don't know if on this unit it might push them over the edge. And then with Devastating Charge, they're going to, if they performed a march action and then immediately did a charge action, they will get +1 Brutal Impact. So the thing you really want to do, they just reward you doing even more.
Brutal 3.
Yes. So what this means is you're going to move charge something 17 inches away, and then you're going to do 12 impacts of Brutal Impact 3, Clash 3.
You're going to guarantee the charge.
With line breakers. So you don't need to be in the flank. You just hit somebody in the shield. Even if they're defense 3 with a shield, you say you don't have any armor. Best be defense 4 with a shield to get a 1.
And also, again, if you're bringing the Thunder Rider, you're going to give them flank. Well, if you're bringing the Thunder Chieftain, you're going to give them flank. So they're also auto coming in on turn 3.
And you're going to take the relic that give them Harden 1, so that defense 3 feels a lot less punishing.
Quite good.
Because something will have to have cleave 2 in order to hurt them.
It's pretty impressive. It's pretty
pretty good.
Quite a unit. I warn you now. I agree with John. I think this unit is going to keep changing, and it's going to keep getting whittled down a little bit to bring it more into line. I don't know how. I'm not going to call any shots on how. I'm just wanting to warn people it's going to happen. It's already happened once. I think it's probably going to happen again. Maybe again after that. It might be points. It might be rules changes. I don't know. But this is going to get touched again. If you were out there and your brain is going, oh, I should buy a ton of boxes of Thunder Riders. I'll stomp everyone. Maybe don't build your list around it, because I don't think it's going to hold up the way it is now forever. So hold off. And if you are going to do that, at least you do it knowing what you're risking. And that is spending too much money on Thunder Riders in an amount that you cannot reasonably field later on.
Yeah, especially when you know that the Thunder Chieftain can only bring 2 in his warband. And so in order to bring more than 2 Thunder Riders in a list that is focused around them, you're going to have to buy another Thunder Chieftain or bring a Chieftain and bring him as the restricted in there. Because they're restricted in a Chieftain. So like there are ways to bring more than 2, but it can get costly monetarily. So don't chase this unit. It's very good, and you're probably going to want to bring 2 if you're playing at a higher level. or if you just want to. I'm going to have 2 boxes, and I'm going to play 2 at some point. I just might not play it against new people, because that seems mean.
Because it is mean.
And like we're gonna see how this goes and see how this plays, like how strong it is in like our own games. But it looks on paper very strong. And you might be hearing all of that and going, "Oh no, what do we do about it?" Well, I'm gonna tell you what you do about it. It's called hindering.
Oh yeah.
You put hindering on the table, like, and then
you hide in it like your life depends on it.
Because it does. Like. Make your opponent who is playing Thunder Riders have to maneuver with the maneuverability they have. Don't just let them get the charge on you. Because hindering is what will stop the Thunder Riders from wrecking your day. Because hindering will remove all of those impacts.
So they go from brutal 3 with a bajillion impacts to 0. And they hate that. There's nothing this Thunder Rider unit will hate more than that.
The other thing you can do against them is you can catch them off guard. If you charge Thunder Riders and don't let them charge you, they cry and probably die. It just is how that works.
And honestly, it doesn't even have to be with a really powerful unit. Even if it's your baseline infantry, if it's a unit of men-at-arms, doesn't matter. You tied them up for a turn or 2.
If you're a Spires player, and you somehow manage to still have Strix alive by the time Thunder Riders are on the table, you send your Strix directly into the Thunder Riders.
Yep.
You find the Thunder Riders with your Strix, you live in them, and as they kill the Strix blow up and they kill the Thunder Riders. That's how you deal with Thunder Riders as Spires. But there is a bunch of different ways you can handle this in a lot of the different armies, but you have to know how to do that. This is going to be a unit that a lot of new players are going to go against, and they're going to get destroyed by it. And they're going to go, why does this exist in the game? And you're going to look at them and go, use a forest. For all that is holy, hide in a tree, my guy.
And this is where we as seasoned players, this is the shout out, have to be good stewards of the game. Look at your tables. Are there enough forests on the board to accommodate units like this? If not, maybe add some more.
Yeah, because sheer like number, like spreadsheet math, unit's crazy. On table though, if your opponent outmaneuvers you by using like proper deployment and like forests, you're probably not going to get as the perfect scenario with them and just like wreck the table. So like, but we're gonna test it. I'm gonna see if I can beat Joe's Nords to death with Triceratops.
I'm going to hug the trees like I'm the Lorax. That's my whole plan.
Yeah, we made a joke in the Nords episode that the Mountain Yodar was the Rock Lee moment where he's like dropping the weights, and that was like hard in 1. The Gara he loses to in that episode is the Thunder Chieftain.
You're not wrong.
Like the Thunder Chieftain and his Thunder Riders are just done. Who's a puppet dude? The puppet dude and the fangirl are like the 2 units of Thunder Riders you bring. The Thunder Chieftain's Gara. Sick.
We're gonna need to make a lot of memes.
This is a Naruto fan podcast now.
Don't get me started, John. I have thoughts. You aren't ready for them.
But beyond Thunder Riders,
speaking of really cool main characters who were actually cooler than the main character, Chosen of Death. Okay, we have to talk about them because they're new, right? And if Thunder Riders are the main character of this anime, Chosen of Death are the Rock Lees, the Shikamaru's. Okay, they're way cooler than the main character. Everyone likes them a ton. They're still not the main character. But I still think they're dope. And then we're talking about it because I think they're also horrifying. So Chosen of Death. You've probably seen the new sculpts. They're beautiful. If you haven't seen them, you should go see them. They're glorious. Move 6. So they got the base move. Clash 3 native. That's pretty good. 6 attacks apiece. That's gonna get good. 5 wounds apiece, which is pretty impressive for nude orcs. Resolve 3, defense 0, which is probably like, what? But evasion 2 natively. So they are already at their evasion 2 cap all the time.
They do this really fun thing, right? Like, even before buffs, they do this fun thing where you look at your opponent and go, did you bring a Cleave 3 unit? Why? And then you punch them. You punch that Cleave 3 unit. Like this is the unit you send to go against things. My opponent goes, I have a turbo hammer, and you go, I don't care. Bang.
Yes. And they have flawless strikes and flurry natively. So all of these attacks, which in a base unit of 3, you're going to be rocking 19 attacks with the leader involved, re-rolling. With flawless strikes on top of that to be able to find your way through armor. Very, very good. Keyword though, they are Chosen of Death. So much like Chosen of Conquest, they must follow Cult of Death. I don't think anyone's surprised. In addition, when this regiment chants Battle Cry, it adds +1 to its evasion characteristic until the end of the round. It does max out at 3, but still, you could put them at evasion 3, which is just nutty. If your opponent is bringing a high rend threat piece, this unit is their nightmare. It makes them wake up in cold sweats in the middle of the night, because all of it means nothing. And, further, currently, you're going to notice they have no cleave. I would like to point you to the war buff that says you get cleave 1. They sure would take that buff really well.
Except they can't.
What?
Because they can only chant death.
Ah, you're correct. I thought that was token. They've changed the keywords on me.
But they will get untouchable.
There we go.
So they get untouchable. But they don't care about the cleave, and let me tell you why. You said it earlier. Flawless strikes. Flawless strikes is way better than I think people realize. Weight of attacks at Clash 3 and when you're on the charge inspired to Clash 4 with flawless strikes means you're going to get stuff through. And then you're also just going to like weight of dice things with flurry. Like
reroll, yeah.
Yeah, this unit's great. And you can go even further with them by like putting a queen with them and giving them like tenacious. And then the the cure relic to give them deadly blades. So then when they like roll up to something with a base unit of 3 and have like three stands swinging with 18 attacks, right? All of those 6s become both like all of those things that go through automatically are great. And then everything your opponent rolls, if they roll a 6, they just take 2 wins.
Yep. So they can just blender something.
Constantly.
Blender. Which is incredible.
And
you can heal them with the matriarch, like you said, to get them back as they start to get whittled down.
Yep. And they're mediums, so they can score, which is great. This army did kind of struggle previously with scoring sometimes because you want to bring a lot of lights, and you didn't have a lot of ways to make lights score. And so now them being able to have like mediums that like do cool stuff and can score is great. There was a little less of them before that weren't just like spamming infantry. Granted, these are also infantry, but they're cooler infantry. And the only reason why I don't think a lot of people are talking about them currently is because Thunder Riders exist, and they occupy a sort of similar role to Thunder Riders. Like, this is a unit you would build a list around that's sort of like a linchpin unit, and when Thunder Riders are the linchpin unit, it's kind of hard to squeeze a 220-point Chosen of Death in there, but I'm going to try to build a list that brings both, because I am weird.
I think they can handle slightly different things. Because like, if something has like shields and bastions, Thunder Riders are going to do better all day, every day.
Absolutely.
But against anything not that, I think Chosen of Death do far better. If something has quite a bit of evasion, Chosen of Death are going to do way better. If something has no armor at all, Chosen of Death are going to do better.
Chosen of Death is going to look at things they're standing in forest, hiding from the Thunder Riders, and eat them alive.
Oh, easy. Yep.
They don't care about the Inspired. They don't get impact attacks. They will just charge through the forest, lose Inspired, still be at Clash 3, reroll all their hits, and kill you.
Yes. It's very good. I think the downside of Chosen of Death is if they get caught out in the open and shot, they're probably in trouble. Or if they get caught flat-footed by a unit that, much like them, has weight of dice and rerolls, the Chosen of Death, if caught off guard, could get popped. However, that's just the price you got to pay for a unit that's this hammery and cool. You just have to pilot it pretty carefully.
And they even have a inbuilt like defense against shooting, which is the loose formation.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's useful.
It's pretty neat. Pretty neat. Wait, do they have loose formation?
They do. They have flawless strikes, flurry, and loose formation.
I don't see loose formation on here.
Oh, I have the old PDF. No.
I don't see loose formation on here. My screen cap is on the screen, so everyone can see.
I'm gonna check the app right now, live.
Here we go. Come on. Did they lose it? Wait, I thought they weren't updating the app.
I don't know. We're gonna find out.
John, this is great entertaining. This is like great entertainment TV.
Loose
Killer.
formation's still on the app.
But they haven't updated the app yet.
We'll find out within the week. I guarantee you.
Okay, there may be a hot fix to the hot fix, but we're not going to cut in a hot fix to this one because we already cut in another one tonight. And I don't want to record another one. So they may or may not have loose formation. I think they don't. But we'll see.
They do. Pop off in the comments about who's right and make fun of the one who's wrong.
Don't go look for the answer first. Okay. John, you get one more to talk about, and I'll let you talk about your funky chicken.
I love the funky chicken.
You do love the funky chicken. You've been waiting for months for funky chicken.
I do. I have been waiting for months for funky chicken, and I'm gonna be honest. This regiment could be absolutely terrible, and I would still bring funky chicken, just because I've been waiting for it for so long, and I want it to be good. And
It's
I would
because of
love
that
to talk.
scene in Jurassic Park 3.
No, I just
Jurassic Park 2. No, 3? 3. Yeah, I'm going with 3. 3, finally.
No, I just think the model looks sick, and also I've loved it since I saw this original stat sheet. It is a medium, which is better than it used to be. It used to be a light.
Now it can
In the
score.
preview rules. Now it can score. That's great. And I don't know how to put into words how much a medium that moves 9 and can score is sick. That's awesome. It's moving up 18 inches on turn 2. What a time. Volley 3, Clash 2, 9 attacks, 15 wounds, Resolve 3, Defense 3, Evasion 2. All handy. It has a regular, so it cannot do your reinforcement line stuff. That's fine. Barrage 5, that's okay shots. With Armor Piercing 1, that's okay. It has Fly, it has Fluid Formation, it's got Cleave 1, it's got Impact 6. It has the same problem the Hero version had, where you're not sure if the free volley action is going to be useful or not. It's going to be deciding between using your Fluid Formation or your volley action, your free volley action every turn. We'll see how that pans out. If it does work the way it currently does, I think it puts a slight hamper on the unit, but at 170 points, it's still pretty good. Maneuverability, it's great. It still does the Birds of Prey thing, where it runs over stuff and hits it. That's great. And then it still has the Brutal Impact 2 on the sides and the flank when it charges. Now, what it doesn't do is it does not give you that special terrifying chant.
Mm-hmm.
But in exchange, what it does is it doesn't take up a hero slot.
Yeah, it's just a unit. Just a unit and a warband.
You can just spend 170 points and slap this in the army.
As a really mobile objective grabber or tricky tech piece.
And I think what it really does pretty well is in the Thunder Rider list that's going to be almost all speakers. You're going to want stuff on turn 2 that can hold objectives. Like, even if it's just one unit, right? A single Caudal will help you score. Like, this, you're not taking this to do turbo damage. You're doing this to grab objectives.
Yeah.
And to, like, take advantage of your opponent's poor positioning, if you can. By flying over them and then punishing them.
And if not, okay, you just stay on the objective.
Yeah, it's making your opponent screen better, and be forced to maybe take their small amount of units and have to, like, make some tough choices of what they're going to screen. And then while you're making your opponent sort of screen in different weird ways, you then have Thunder Chieftain and his Thunder Riders come in and just sort of
mollywop everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically.
This is the Mountain Giant of
Mountain Jotnar?
Mountain Jotnar. This is the Mountain Jotnar of Woodrun, in that he doesn't individually have a very, very important job, but the job that it does do is to distract your opponent and harass your opponent or be in the way. But I think it does it slightly better because it moves faster and it's a medium instead of a heavy.
And it's cheaper.
Yeah.
So you're telling me the Quaddle is Gara, and the Mountain Jotnar is Rockly, about to get bodied. In fact.
To keep up with this metaphor, yeah.
Okay, very good. Great. I'm glad we established this. This is now the baseline of how we're going to review factions from here until the end of time. There are more War Scrolls. There are more units in here that I think are cool and worth talking about, but if we went through all of them, it would take forever. We're probably going to mess them up anyway. But I think this is enough to show what's emblematic of the faction, what the new design space is. And hopefully to give you a few ideas out there, listeners, of what sort of lists you might want to run and start to build towards. If you are really excited about this, if you're an existing Wandroon player and you're looking for new list tech, please feel free to share your list ideas in the comments below, because we just like new list ideas. And we have been sending back, I mean, between like the 5 or 6 really, really dedicated Conquest players in our group, we've probably shared like 20 lists back and forth in the past in the past day. It's nutty how many options are out there. So if you have some really cool, slick stuff, share it with us. Also, if you are a new Wandroon player, I hope this was helpful. I hope it gives you the baseline of what all has changed. But if you have further questions, put them in the comments. We are more than happy to help you. I understand that while this is easier than the old one, it can still be very tricky. There's a lot of traps that you can put yourself in. Feel free to ask, and we'll try to help you navigate those waters. Because Lord knows, you've watched us make a couple of mistakes live that we corrected, and maybe some we didn't correct. So it's bound to happen. It's part of the learning process. Give yourself some grace. We're happy to help.
Yeah, and stay tuned. Come check out the channel in a few weeks, because we are going to be testing both of these factions, both Nords and Wandroon, on repeat against one another, and also against, like, Sorcerer Kings is our meta. Almost everything is represented in our meta besides Spires heavily. That's starting to change. And we're going to just play games against lots of different people with these factions and sort of give you what we experience. We're going to take a variety of lists. I promise I'm not just going to take a Thunderrider list every time and then just go, wow, Thunderriders are great. Like, we'll try a bunch of stuff. I officially will own everything in Wandroon here soon, so that's exciting.
That's amazing. And I think it'll give us a lot more list variety to play with. And we'll be working on some other update videos for all the other stuff that got touched. Keep an eye out next week. Otherwise, that's been all of our opinions. Bonafide and Kentucky Fried. We'll see y'all in the next one.